All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome our Department of Defense partners here with us today who have been 100% on board in coordination and planning with our National Guard partners. We have with us today General Terrence O'Shaughnessy, Commander of the United States Northern Command, General Joseph Lingell, the Chief of the National Guard Bureau, Gracia Check, FEMA Region 4 Administrator, and Brigadier General Todd Hunt, North Carolina National Guard's Assistant Adjutant for Maneuver. I'd also like to recognize our partners from U.S. Army North Commander, Lieutenant General Jeffrey Buchanan, and the Joint Task Force 60 Commander, North Carolina National Guard's Major General James Ernst. The system set in place by the National Response Framework during major disasters is working in support of North Carolina and its state emergency response team during Hurricane Florence. This disaster required and requires a coordinated effort from all levels of our government. And as you can see by the leaders here today from the Federal Emergency Management Agency and the Department of Defense. Thank you, General O'Shaughnessy, General Lingell, and Gracia for your leadership and continued support. I'd like to recognize General O'Shaughnessy for some remarks at this time. Sir?
Thank you, Mike, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come down here and see the North Carolina team that we've been working so closely with virtually. It's amazing to see the National Response Framework work exactly as designed, and my hat's off to this team here within this Operations Center for the close collaboration that has allowed us, the Department of Defense, to make sure that we have postured and we're prepared and now participating in the events here because of the great collaboration that's allowed us to get the right equipment here, the right team here, and to be able to be part of this response effort. I would ask as we move forward that we continue to work closely with this team. I look forward to continuing to bring Department of Defense capability and capacity to augment the amazing work that's being done here by the first responders, by the local community, and certainly by the National Guard, who has been absolutely phenomenal. And with that, I'll turn it over to General Lingell.
Yes, General O'Shaughnessy, thanks, and good to be here and really be a part of this great response effort. And to see the National Response Framework work so seamlessly between the local and the state and the non-federal capacity of the National Guard and blended with the federal capacity immensely brought by the Department of Defense, I think I could say I've never seen it better coordinated, better orchestrated than this particular exercise. From the NGB perspective, we work very hard to make sure that General Lusk, the governor's team, Task Force Commander General Ernst has what he needs on the non-federal side from the National Guards, not just from this state, but from the other 54 surrounding states who want to participate when they see another state that has a need. You know, we've got a lot of guardsmen here. We've got 28 states, in addition to just North Carolina, that have provided troops or equipment or capacity or planning or command and control. And all of that has been extremely well coordinated with U.S. Northern Command and General O'Shaughnessy and his apparatus at U.S. Northern Command, who is the leader to synchronize and make sure that we don't have redundancies in capabilities or capacities here throughout the system. So to see it work well from our end at the National Guard Bureau and all the states who want to participate, it's great to be part of it, and thank you very much.
Thank you, General Lingell. So at this time we have some time for a few questions. Does anybody have any questions?
Perhaps the general can give some details. Oh, sorry.
Travis Fain with WRL. Maybe you could give some details about, you say it's going well, things are being well coordinated. Can you give some examples of what's working?
Sure, I'll jump in and start. One of the things I'd like to highlight is we, the military Department of Defense, are part of these communities. If you look at this particular area of the country, it's about as dense as we have anywhere relative to the installations that are here. And as a result, the first responders that we had was the individual installations that were responding in coordination with the community first responders. And we've had great examples of how they've been able to help and incorporate the capability and capacity of the installations with the first responders. Sometimes as simple as allowing the first responders to come onto an installation like Camp Lejeune and actually get gas and fuel up some of the vehicles, sometimes taking advantage, for example, of the amphibious capability that we have and able to transport with first responders, evacuees or folks to get evacuate out to fire stations, and then they can be forward transferred from there to all the way, for example, Cherry Point, where we were able to, after a shelter was taking on some water and bring over 200 civilians onto the installation to remain overnight, feed them, and then get them out to follow-on shelters and follow-on activities from there. And so I think what you see is those local installations have been part of the response of the local community. And then on the broader perspective, the things that we were able to bring forward because of the close collaboration with the team here to understand what are the needs going to be allowed us to pre-position things like the high water vehicles that are being used in what we call the dual status commander role. And so we have General Ernst right down here in the front, who is actually working directly for the governor in one side, and then working on the Title X side for General Buchanan, and then ultimately to us at Northcom in a command and control that's taken these high water vehicles and integrated them into the overall response and able to actually use them for both rescue efforts. For example, Fort Bragg, the truck company, the trucks over there had 22 rescues, over 300 individuals that were brought as part of the broader effort under General Ernst in his dual status command role. And many, many stories such as that of the integration of the broader Department of Defense capabilities with the first responders, with the National Guard, all coordinated by the Operations Center right here.
Lauren Horsch with the News and Observer. I'm just curious, do we know how many military personnel are on the ground working for response and recovery efforts in North Carolina at the moment?
You know, I know that we have the 2,800 North Carolina National Guardsmen. We have probably up to 500 more active duty folks. And I can tell you it's really been a seamless integration for us. As you may have known, our largest unit had been out to Fort Bliss in an exercise, and their equipment has been on the way back via some trains. So we reached out to our active component partners in order to get those high water clearance vehicles that we so desperately need during operations like these. And it's been a seamless operation. They fold right into with our National Guard partners and begin executing missions. And I will tell you that it's really been great value added to us to make sure that we have all of the assets that we need to offer the full spectrum of response capability to a disaster like this. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Frances Sellers from the Washington Post. I'm curious about the relationship between the state and federal response, particularly FEMA. I would love to hear a bit more about the role FEMA is.
Administrator Chet.
Well, it's been one team. With all of us, it's been one team. With our DOD, we have a defense coordinating officer, an element at the region. So we are together and working together even during blue skies and practicing for days like this. So when we see disasters happening, we bring the one team to the fight. And then we work together, of course, year round with our National Guard and with our state emergency management, whether it's exercising or whether it's the real mission. No, ma'am. We were planning ahead, making sure we had the right things in the right place at the right time.
Are any soldiers deployed in any sort of law enforcement capacity, or is it all rescue operations?
So we do have some National Guard members that are deployed in a security role. But basically, their mission is just to patrol and make sure that everything's there's no looting or anything like that going on. We haven't had any major problems with that. In this disaster, we're using law enforcement to provide law enforcement arrest powers and with weapons and things like that. So for this, primarily, we've used our National Guard partners and our active component partners for transporting supplies, search and rescue, working in shelters, and just performing wellness checks, a whole variety of missions. And I'll tell you something else. With the talent that we have on stage here and what this represents to everybody is a tremendous reach back to the best military in the world. While you know, we may have several hundred soldiers and airmen, you know, and 2,800 guardsmen, that having these folks up here demonstrates that we've got basically the whole force available to us should we need it. And that sends, I think, a pretty powerful message.
Do you know how many are being used in law enforcement and where? I'm assuming Wilmington, New Bern, do you know cities and numbers?
They're not actually being used in law enforcement with, we haven't deployed, yes, go ahead.
Glad I didn't trip jumping like that. Hey, good afternoon. I'm Jim Ernst. I'm the dual status commander. I have direct control of the forces that have been integrated into the state. We are not using any forces in law enforcement of any type. What our soldiers are doing is relieving law enforcement the opportunity to do law enforcement. We're manning radios, we're manning checkpoints, unarmed, so the law enforcement can get out there and do their job. Understand? Can I clarify that any farther?
Unarmed.
Unarmed. No weapons. Okay. Any more?
Thank you, Jim. Jones.
All right. Thank you very much.